Dr. Merchant, would it be, I heard about this not metaphor, but comparison before. Would this be for you a sound Trinitarian comparison or not? Within a household, I don't know if this is called economic trinity, but you have a family and they're all equally humans, yet it's one household. Can this be applied to Trinity or not, and why?
Sometimes what today is called social Trinitarianism depicts the Father, Son, and Spirit as three beings in a deep, loving, familial relationship. Mormon theology, as it turns out, Mormonism, the American cult of Christianity, sees the Father, Son, and Spirit in explicitly familial ways, very much like literal father and sons. It depends on how we want to use that. If you want to use it as a metaphor, like Gregory did, to move us to affirming the ontological oneness of God, then it can be okay. If we don't do that and we just sort of leave it, well, then we are tritheists. And so certain philosophical theologians have pointed out about this view. They've said, well, imagine we were to take three gods, Zeus, Mars, and Poseidon, right? And we take three Greek gods and say they create a covenant with one another and they decide to become a very loving and deferential and mutually supportive team. They never combat, they never fight, they don't want to. They love each other so deeply, and they're one very harmonious team. That wouldn't make Zeus, Mars, and Poseidon a trinity. That is not what Christians mean by Trinitarianism. They don't mean a very loving polytheism. By Trinity, they are denying polytheism, and read all of the Trinitarians, they are emphatically denying polytheism. So that would be the problem of the family analogy.
I think I asked you this in the class a year ago or so when we talked about Power Rangers and Voltron. So this will be basically, if I remember correctly, a good analogy, a good parallel, that tritheism in this case of Greek gods coming together as a team fighting. So it will be basically like Power Rangers or Voltron who are teaming up together, but they're still not one entity. They're all independent gods or deities, whatnot. Correct?
Yeah. So when you have a very harmonious, unified team, that is really well represented in when I was a kid. Voltron was the greatest example of this, and later on Power Rangers they took on the same thing. And so with Power Rangers, I don't know if more people would be familiar with that, but you'd have these different fighting robots that would all, every story was the same. They would take on this great enemy that had come to destroy everything, and so they'd be fighting him, but they couldn't fight him well enough as individuals, and so they had to unify. So it's this metaphor about becoming a team and trusting and all of this stuff. And so what happens is that they actually become impersonal parts of a Megazord, which is a new fighting robot made up of the five individual fighting robots. So one becomes an arm, another one becomes the other arm, the two legs, the torso, and the head. So you got the five of them come together. Now they're impersonal parts. And I always thought it was so interesting when I watched Power Rangers when my kids were young. They watched Power Rangers, and so I watched with them. And when the Megazord, when the head would turn up at the end and then the eyes would begin to glow with consciousness, I would wonder, who is this new personality? We had five individual personalities, the Red Ranger and the Yellow Ranger and the Black Ranger and the Pink Ranger and so on. Who is the new personality? We never say. Like the Megazord, is there consciousness? Is he a new sixth mind, his own mind? We're never really introduced to him, interestingly. So that's the problem with partialism. If the Father, Son, and Spirit are all sort of 1/3 of God, but the Trinity is God, well, who is this fourth personality that we don't really know? There is no being called Trinity. The Trinity is a doctrine, not a being. There is a God, one God, and it's accurate to say that God is triune, but there is no, Trinity who is someone other than the Father, Son, and Spirit.